Hey guys, welcome back to the Blue Podcast with me, Tom, Ben, and Fab. How are you boys doing today?
Good, thanks.
Doing well, thank you.
Good stuff. That's what I like to hear. Today we're going to be doing sort of like a transfer show for the Premier League, sort of breaking down all the major deals that have happened already, and then sort of looking into any rumours, seeing how that'll affect the Premier League table for next season. Obviously, today we've got Ben, big Man City fan, and Fab, big Liverpool fan. So obviously, two sort of polar opinions and two teams that are definitely the title rivals going into next season, you'd think anyway. Unless those Neymar rumours are true, in which case Chelsea might actually have a chance. But no, I think to sort of kick off the video, Ben, we'll start with you. Obviously, Erling Haaland, massive signing at the beginning of the window. I mean, that was talked about for ages. You've just brought in Calvin Phillips as well. Obviously, there's a lot more discussions surrounding like Cucurella potentially coming in, other outgoings, Sterling, Jesus, Zinchenko. It looks like you could be selling your entire bench, basically. I just want to hear your thoughts on the business you've done so far and sort of any of the people that you'd like to sign.
Yeah, the business we've done so far has obviously been good. Haaland's come in, so we have a number 9 now. Crazy. And then Calvin Phillips, obviously good signing, replacing Fernandinho, so he's going to obviously be back up to Rodri. But I think they're thinking that he can play in a bit more of a forward role as well, so like a bit of versatility there. I'd probably include Julian Alvarez, who we got in January, who went out on loan, is joined the squad in summer as like another signing in there because he's sort of replacing Jesus, so obviously going to Arsenal. And then Cucurella, I think it'd be a good signing, and with the outgoings that seem to be happening, I think we need to sign him really. And maybe even another player after that. If all the outgoings that are supposedly happen, we're gonna have no squad depth because Chelsea are coming for like our bench team at the moment. But yeah, like in terms of the outgoings, obviously Jesus to Arsenal. I liked him, but he obviously wanted to go because he wanted more game time. So. Fair enough. Zinchenko, Ake, I mean, he's a good bench player, a good rotation player, but obviously he might want to go for more game time. Fair enough. Zinchenko, I'd be sad to see Zinchenko go because he's got heart, and I think you need that in your team, and I like him. But if he wants to go for more game time, fair enough. And then Sterling. Sterling's the main one because I mean, yes, he misses a lot of chances, but he's a winger. Like he's not supposed to score all the time. And he does chip in with some goals. And he's the only, like, if we do lose him, we will have to replace him at some point because the only player on our team who can beat a man 1v1 with pace is the only man who can make that assist or do that assist for Gundogan's first goal against Aston Villa, where he beats that man at 1v1 with pace and whips it in for Gundogan. The other thing is, I don't think we should be selling him to a direct rival in Chelsea. That doesn't sit well with me. I'm not happy about that. But again, if fair enough, if he wants to go like for more game time, fair, okay then. But selling to a European team or something like that, like don't sell into a direct rival. But there you go.
It's interesting that you mentioned, actually, you said that Sterling is the only person in the team that can beat a man 1-for-1 with pace. But I mean, your club is stacked with wingers. I mean, Mahrez, Grealish, Foden, Bernardo Silva can do a job there.
They're all that technical type though. They're none of them. I mean, they're not slow, but they're not fast. Fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah. So I'm not sure about selling to Chelsea, but if you
it does kind of seem that like Sterling's not a Guardiola type player though. Obviously, he's one of the ones that Guardiola didn't sign. All the others have pretty much come from him now.
All taken.
Yeah. He's done so well. He's done so well under Guardiola, though. That's the thing. And like, I think he's the most played player under Guardiola, apparently, or something.
Maybe that's because he's just been there the longest.
Yeah, maybe. But then also, I think in the time that he's been here, he's second top goal scorer, only behind Aguero. So like, he's not a bad player, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I do think if he does go, we do need to replace him. And I do not like that we're selling him to Chelsea.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, Fab, moving on to Liverpool anyway, obviously you've been very busy this window as well. And it's actually quite unlike Liverpool nowadays to splash big money on players. But obviously Darwin Núñez coming in for 85 million is a hell of a lot. And obviously you got the smaller ones as well, sort of Calvin Ramsey coming in, Fabio Carvalho, sort of one that's flown under the radar a bit. But me being a Forest fan, I've followed him in the Championship last season. He's outstanding talent. And then obviously you've got Mane and Minamino with the two sort of major outgoings at the moment. What's your thoughts on the business been done so far?
Yeah, I mean, it was a good start to the window picking up Carvalho. I think always picking up those bright Championship players, not all the time end up coming through in the Prem, but most of the time you can at least sell them on for a similar price. So I honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with picking up Fabio. And then you had the kind of Núñez Mane transfer saga, which was frustrating to watch actually for a lot of it, because it took such a long time to get that deal over the line. The only thing I picked up from it is that we had to make sure Mane was going before we signed Núñez. And I think that speaks volumes financially for Liverpool at the moment. It's still a frustrating cycle where the sales normally come first before we can bring someone in. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, but I think we will end up missing out on players like that in the future if we can't make a sale. You know, obviously with Coutinho, I think we sort of hit the jackpot there, really. Mane, he's a quality player, but we didn't quite get the sum for him. But we made sales like Minamino to bring that back. But I don't want to complain about it either. I think Núñez is a bright talent, and I think Mane, it was a good time for him to move on. I think Núñez did come quite expensive compared to Haaland. I think there's a bit of a lack of young strikers at the moment. I think Haaland and Núñez were the only two I could really think of. And obviously both of them went for big bucks. I think Núñez isn't as proven as Haaland either, but I would hesitate to say, he might have the same potential as him. He performed. Lots of Liverpool fans and City fans exchanged stats on social media when both the signings were completed, which was entertaining. I think you can nitpick all the stats you want. I think Haaland's the better striker, and I think because of that will put City favourites. I don't know if he'll hit the ground running or not, but I think with Haaland, I don't think it matters as much almost. And I don't think Núñez will start for us. That's the one mistake I think a lot of Liverpool fans are making. I don't think he'll come straight into our team. I think he'll start, Salah, Jota, Diaz, some form of that front three, and he'll try and ease Núñez into the starting 11 slowly. But I can't mind read Klopp, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about him sort of being integrated slowly into the team. Because obviously Núñez is a very different kind of player to the attackers that you've got at the moment and the attackers that you've had in sort of like the last 5 years. It was quite an unusual signing because watching, like, sort of based on the eye test, he's not that technically gifted. Like, he's a big striker, he's physical, he scores a lot of goals. But in terms of like, compared to Jota and Diaz, for instance, who are both picked up for relatively cheap, considering what their value is now, and they're both very technically gifted players, short, quick, agile, whereas Nunes brings sort of that explosiveness to your attack, I guess, that is what Klopp was obviously looking for and what he feels like he's been missing out on for the last few years. I wanted to also get your thoughts on Mo Salah, because there's rumours of him having a £60 million price tag on his head after asking for a lot of money with the new contract. Do you think there's any sort of truth to that? If there is, would you be unhappy with him going, considering there's like Jared Bowen and other sort of right-sided wingers you could pick up for a lot cheaper, and Klopp could definitely turn into quality players?
Yeah, I mean, it's not nice, but I could see him handing in a transfer request tomorrow, and it wouldn't surprise me that much. I think he does deserve to be on a top wage, and Liverpool can't offer him that. Just, you've seen how much Nunes, Nunes, Diaz, and Jota all on like 100k a week, around about, which is almost unforgivable. And I can completely understand where Salah comes from, and if he wants to leave, I think that's fair enough. I think it's the same story with Mane a little bit. I think Salah's one that I would see more likely to go the other side of 30 and still be able to perform at a top class level. So I'd love for him to stay, and I think he will stay for another season. But that's it.
Okay.
I think he's gone after that, if not this summer. I just hope he doesn't stiff us by going at the very end, and not leaving us time to bring in a replacement.
And he shouldn't go to a direct rival like Sterling.
What can you see him signing for Man City? I can't see.
No. I mean, like Chelsea seems to be in for everyone at the moment, don't they? So like,
I mean,
I can see him going back to Chelsea.
That's kind of Chelsea's buying patterns recently, isn't it? Just buying former academy products. Yeah. But no, I think the two players we kind of touched on there is in sort of like the young wild cards. Ben, you mentioned Julian Alvarez. Fab, you mentioned, we talked about Fabio Carvalho. Do you think they have a realistic shot of starting next season? I mean, both of your managers are sort of well known for giving opportunities to young players. Obviously, Fab, we've had Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott breaking into the first team. Ben, you've had Phil Foden, who's kind of like the standout name. Obviously, with Julian Alvarez, you'd think if he was going to get a chance, he'd be partnering Erling Haaland up top in sort of maybe a 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
I think if the outgoings that are apparently happen, then he will get game time. But I'm not sure if it will be 4-4-2 because he can play on the wing. So it'll either be in rotation with Haaland, like for like cup games and stuff, and also on the wing. I think, and I think it probably will be a bit of basically, like I say, it'll be a replacement for Jesus, but I think he might be a little bit more clinical than Jesus. Not saying that Jesus couldn't score goals, but he's a bit like Sterling in the sense that he did miss chances. I still liked him, but he had the finish of a winger, so. But yeah, I think like I say, if the outgoings that are supposed to be happen, then he will get game time.
Yeah, and for Fab, with Fabio Carvalho, he is definitely an out-and-out number 10. Like, I can't see him playing as that number 8 because obviously Klopp plays normally Fabinho, Thiago Henderson. There's no number 10 in there. They're all sort of like workhorse, definitely central midfielders, not like more of attacking midfielders. Can you see him changing his system to accommodate Fabio Carvalho, or do you think Carvalho will sort of just have to fit in where he's told to, essentially?
Yeah, I think he'll wait his turn. I think he'll likely get. There's 4 forwards at the moment for Liverpool, and I think it'll be heavy rotation between them. He might sneak in there, especially if an injury comes through, but I presume it'll just be for FA Cup games and potentially the odd Champions League game that the result, doesn't matter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he is still obviously a very young player. It would kind of make sense for him not to be thrown in the deep end for Liverpool. Obviously, he's not Premier League tried and tested. But yeah, it's definitely an exciting season to be a Man City and Liverpool fan, that's for sure. This is one of the biggest windows you both had in a long time in terms of the personnel. Obviously, Grealish was 100 million, but Grealish hasn't quite got the same ring to it as Erling Haaland. But yeah, moving on, I think we can sort of look at some of the London clubs because they seem to be the ones making all the headlines at the moment with their signings. Obviously, Arsenal seem to be throwing the checkbook at everyone this season. Don't know where they're getting the money from, but they're certainly splashing it. I think Chelsea as well seem to be hijacking everybody's deals, and Spurs are the ones that are sort of doing their business quietly, picking up players without much media attention. Obviously, we saw that with Basuma and Perisic. Basuma was sort of wanted for a very long time by a lot of clubs, and Spurs sneaked in with a 25 million pound bid, and they've got their man. I wanted to talk about Richarlison, Rafinha, and Jesus in particular. I mean, Ben, you touched on Jesus, but the three Brazilians there. Obviously, Richarlison majorly linked with Spurs and Rafinha majorly linked with Arsenal. Chelsea now are looking like the favourites to sign Rafinha, and they're trying to hijack the Richarlison deal too. Ben, we'll start with you. How do you think Rafinha, Richarlison, do you think that'll enhance those attacks, or do you think they'll play sort of second fiddle? Because obviously with Arsenal, Bukayo Saka starts as the right wing, Rafinha is also a right winger, and then with Spurs, Richarlison's a striker, but Harry Kane plays for Spurs. So how do you see those two sort of fitting in?
I think, I mean, obviously it gives them options, and it will improve them. I mean, obviously those players can play other positions as well. But yeah, it is an interesting one. It's like you say, Chelsea seems to be hijacking every deal they can at the moment, and yeah, it's obviously the new owner is wanting to make a statement, and I think he's basically doing what Tuchel wants at the moment, because I heard that apparently it was like, is it Marina Granovskaya and Petr Cech wanted to give Lukaku another season, and Tuchel was like, nah. I want him out, and the Todd Bowley was just like, yeah, he's out, he's out, he's gone. So like he's just doing what Tuchel wants at the moment. I do think if there is a team, I mean, even before the transfer window, but if there is a team to sort of be up there with City and Liverpool, it will be Chelsea with the signings that they are making and look like they could be making. Like it will be Chelsea up there.
Yeah, Fab, do you agree with that? I mean, for me, Chelsea seem like obviously this is going to be quite quite contrasting with Ben's opinion, but I don't think Chelsea are having that good window at all. I think they obviously Lukaku. We know that's going to be one of the worst transfers in history with how it's progressed to now. But I just think spending hundreds of millions on signing City's bench essentially with Sterling, Zinchenko, Ake all being talked about, that doesn't scream like competing for a title, especially when they've already spent hundreds of millions on Havertz, Pulisic, Timo Werner, obviously Lukaku we mentioned, but having already got that attack with those young players, maybe just needing a bit more time in the Premier League. Ziyech as well. We don't even talk about him because it's just sort of assumed that he's going to disappear to AC Milan or somewhere like that. But do you really think that? Yeah, do you agree with Ben, or do you think these are bad signings?
It's nice to hear a negative spin on it, actually. Anyway, Karen.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see Chelsea at the moment with their signings doing any particular damage. But it's funny because you mentioned those three Brazilians who've been in the headlines a lot recently, and I personally think it's a bit of a curveball. I actually think Jesus is the worst player out of those three. That's how highly I rate Rafinha and Richarlison, and that's coming from a Liverpool fan as well. I think Rafinha's an amazing player. I think he's one of the best wingers in the Prem, and I think if Salah was to go, he would probably be very high on my list, if not top, as a replacement. And Richarlison, although he plays for Everton, even though I have to admit he would definitely give a Prem side some teeth up front, and that's why I actually think whoever picks up those two players will probably have a really good next season. So it is a bit of a shame Liverpool aren't in for any of them. We were in for Rafinha for a long time, but I can see if a team like Chelsea picks up, a couple of them, I could definitely see him competing. But I still don't think Chelsea have had. I'll be honest, I can't actually think of like the Chelsea transfer. I know they've had people come in, but like none of them flash out to me. I can't think of anyone that would actually improve their squad.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, this isn't obviously a podcast just for Chelsea slander, but like we're talking about Rafinha going there for 65 million, but does he obviously Rafinha is a mercurial talent, there's no denying that. At Liverpool, I think he'd do the same numbers as Salah, to be honest. But is he that different to Ziyech? Like, is he worth 40 million more than Hakim Ziyech when Hakim Ziyech is a very similar type of player? Obviously, there's comparisons drawn between him and Mahrez often, but Ziyech is a fantastic player just in a Chelsea side that doesn't suit his system. Is Rafinha going to really add anything different to that? Is Sterling that much of an upgrade on? Obviously, Sterling's got the track record of scoring in the Prem, but is he that much of an upgrade on Christian Pulisic or Mason Mount or Kai Havertz? It seems like Chelsea's transfer business is our players aren't scoring, so let's go and throw a ton of money at players that will score, but they don't know for sure that they will. It just seems like a bad policy to me. But again, maybe that.
I'd say the same thing about City. But...
Come on.
I'm only half joking.
See, for me at City, I kind of feel like it's just guaranteed goals. Whoever plays there, I think that's how Raheem Sterling's managed to score so many.
I would agree that I don't know if Haaland will hit the ground running because it'll take time for him to adapt to us and us to adapt to him. But I would like to think that he will eventually start scoring lots of goals. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Like as soon as Tom's not here, it's just Chelsea slander all the time. Yeah. But yeah, No, I think with Jesus, it's like you say, with him being the worst one a lot. I think it's not that he's like that much worse. I think I don't know. Maybe Arsenal know this, but I think some people think they're getting a striker, but they're not. They're getting a winger. So, and I mean, maybe he will play striker. Maybe it'll click at striker, but it never has for us. It's always works when he's been on the wing. So I don't know what the plan is with him. Obviously, they've got one, but if it's to play him striker, then maybe, like I say, maybe it will click. But that's not my experience. Well, our experience with him. It's always been better on the wing. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but again, I'd probably have to disagree with you on this one too. I think when he first came to the Prem, I remember that first season he came in January and he scored something like 10 goals in 11 games or something. Mm. And then a couple of seasons after that, him and Aguero were just rotating. Like we're talking about Aguero as one of the best strikers in Premier League history, and he's been benched on games where he's fit because Guardiola wants to play Jesus. I still remember those seasons where Jesus was notching plenty of goals. In a team that everybody was scoring goals. So I think he will do a job.
Yeah.
Especially because obviously we've seen how Lacazette's role transitioned towards the end of the season, playing more as like a centre forward, helping out like Saka and Martinelli and Smith Rowe all to get them goals. I think Jesus has got more than enough technical ability to do that job. And I think if that's what Arteta wants out of him, I think he'll do very well there.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess we'll just see. I think what we probably should touch on as well is maybe a bit of a negative one, but teams that are having particularly bad windows at the moment. So the ones that spring to mind for me, obviously, Man U are kind of the obvious one. We've seen how many problems they've got with Ronaldo speaking out about how bad the window is, or reportedly speaking out. But the two in particular are Everton and Leeds. I mean, for me, they're getting a lot of money for it, but their club's best players are just being stolen away with seemingly no reply. I mean, we'll touch on Leeds. Obviously, we mentioned Rafinha quite a bit. Phillips has already gone to Man City. Rafinha is more than likely going as well. And they've replaced them with Brendan Aronson, Rasmus Christensen, and Mark Roca, all of whom are unproven in the Premier League, really unproven in Europe's top leagues. And it seems like the type of signings that are relegated, that a side that's going to get relegated wouldn't make. I remember Sheffield United signing Sander Berger a few years ago for 30 million, and look what happened to them. So yeah, I just wanted to know your guys' thoughts on what Everton as well. Obviously, them losing Richarlison, probably Anthony Gordon and Calvert-Lewin as well. Do you think they'll have enough to stay up? I mean, we've seen Everton linked with Harry Winks most recently, who's essentially Andre Gomez, but with a price tag because he's English. Like it's not the type of signings that a club that's moving forward would necessarily make. What do you guys think? We'll start with Fab.
Yeah, I think Everton, they've got a lot of assets in that team. And I think because they've been financially so, I mean, a lot of Liverpool fans have a keen eye for it, but they've spent a lot of money in the last 5 seasons and have nothing to show for it. And it's one of those you just kind of know it's a bit doomed to fail unless something in the transfer management changes within that club. It just, they're not going to sign anyone that's going to save their season, no matter how much money. You could give them 100 mil, they'll make 3, class signings, still get relegated. I think there's something not quite right at the higher level. I don't think it's always the coach either, the manager. I think in terms of their transfer strategy, something's been wrong for a long time. And I don't think they're going to fix it in time for next season. I don't necessarily think they'll get relegated because they still do have quality in that team. But I think they are kind of putting a bit of a gamble if they don't try and change anything. And with Leeds, they've got a lot of young talent. They can probably get quite a lot of money for just as we saw Calvin Phillips, Rafinha. But the one thing for me, which is why I compliment Rafinha so often, is his goal involvements for Leeds are ridiculous. It was like 65% at some point this season. If you're scoring more than half of your team's goals, you're doing something right, or your team's doing something wrong. So whichever one we find out that to be, it will probably affect Leeds' season because as I said, if Rafinha is just a fantastic player and he leaves, Leeds might be all right. But if Leeds are missing something and Rafinha's kind of trying to make up for that lack, whether it's like a clinical edge in the box or just maybe some creativity in the final third, and he leaves, they're screwed. They're going to get relegated. And as I said, both teams almost got relegated last season. So yeah, interesting to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you, Fab, entirely. That was the one for me, sort of Rafinha making all their goals. Obviously, Bamford was injured last season, but individually, if you look at their players, Ben, I just want to touch on like players like Luke Ayling, Stuart Dallas, Liam Cooper, Mateusz Klich. These are all championship players. They got promoted to the Premier League because they were playing Marcelo Bielsa football, and they did so well in the first season of the Premier League because they took everybody by surprise playing Bielsa football. The only 3 players of real quality in their team are Phillips, Rafinha, and Bamford. Bamford's injured, and the other 2 are gone or about to go. Do you agree with Fab and I that they might struggle like quite a lot, or do you think they've got enough in there to stand a chance?
I think. I mean, on paper, it looks like they'll struggle. I mean, I guess it depends if these players are brought in hit the ground running or not, and how obviously how the new manager gets them playing. But yeah, on paper it does look like they might struggle. But I mean, you never know. But yeah, and then with Everton, yeah, I guess like you say, there is something wrong at a higher level, like in terms of transfer strategy at Everton. So unless, like you say, unless you change that or someone else comes in or something, it depends how they reinvest the money from these sales. But history suggests that they're not going to invest it well or wisely. So don't really know what's going to happen there. But yeah, even then, like you say, like Everton have still got enough quality in that squad to stay in the Premier League. But sometimes that's not enough. But they definitely do have the quality to do it. But we'll see.
Yeah. I agree with you both. I think, Fab, you mentioned in particular about Everton's transfer dealings over the last few seasons. I saw somewhere a couple of years ago that they drew comparisons between a 14-year-old playing Football Manager and Everton's sort of transfer policy. I mean, if you're spending money on Fabian Delph and Gylfi Sigurdsson, and there's so many others. You met Andre Gomes, who's been a massive flop. Michael Keane, Yerry Mina. There's so many players that are just not good enough, but they've spent 30, 40 million on each of them. And now they're going for free. I mean, we just saw Delph and Sigurdsson leave on a free transfer. Sigurdsson probably for other reasons than his footballing, but so many players that have just gone, but they spent a large amount of money on it. It's not good transfer business, in my opinion. Obviously, Man U, I mean, we don't really need to touch on them. I think so. I think you can say something if you want, Ben. It's just been so much reported.
Yeah, no, I mean, apparently they're getting closer to De Jong, aren't they? And like they've apparently even closer with I think he's a Malakia, is he? Malacia from Feyenoord. So a left back, I think he is. For was it 17 mil or 15 mil plus 2
mil? Hijacking Leon's deal, aren't they?
Yeah. So I mean, see what comes of them. But yeah, I think like in terms of like you say, Ronaldo reportedly kicking up a fuss. I think he probably has kicked him up the arse a little bit, kicked him into gear because like those deals. I mean, especially the Malacia one. Like that. Well, that wasn't happening. But all of a sudden, like they're getting close to De Jong, and now they're even closer to Malacia. So yeah, we'll see what comes of them. But yeah,
it's just not been great for them so far, has it? I mean, you can easily picture. I know Ten Hag's in charge now, but I just have visions of the bench next season being Van der Beek sat next to De Jong, sat next to Malacia, sat next to Anthony, with McTominay and Fred in the midfield too, with Andreas Pereira sat in front. It's just you can just see it happening, can't you? It's happened so much.
I mean, I really can't see if Ten Hag does that, it'll be crucified by the United fans. But yeah, I can't see him do that. I do think they will improve under Ten Hag. I mean, it's obviously difficult not to improve from last season, but Ten Hag's a good manager, so I do think they will improve. And I think, I mean, so far, De Jong and Malacia are good signings for them. It just depends who else they sign, which obviously we don't know yet, to see how the squad will be next season. But yeah.
It's just not been good for them so far, has it? But anyway, we'll move on. I think it would be remiss of us not to talk about Nottingham Forest. Now we're back in the big leagues. I kind of just consume all Nottingham Forest Premier League content I can. So to be able to create some here, I think it'd be silly not to. But I think the one standout that you guys may have heard of, Taiwo Awoniyi. Fab used to play for Liverpool, of course, coming through their academy. Yeah, he did. And I saw a photo the other day of him training with Mane, Salah, and Firmino, I think it was, in the training photos. And Awoniyi has like a good few inches height on them and just absolutely towered above them. But obviously 17.5 million from Union Berlin. He scored 15 goals last season for them. Obviously, they finished 5th in the Bundesliga, which is quite an achievement, only 1 point behind Leipzig. So for him to be their sort of main striker, it's quite a coup that Forest have then gone and got him. I don't know if Forest will stay up this season. I hope we do. It'd be nice to, and signings like Awoniyi will definitely help with that. But yeah, he's sort of a standout signing that's flown under the radar a bit, just because Forest aren't one of the more talked about clubs in the league, and he comes from a team that's not really talked about. He's not very like a famous player or anything like that. But I can easily see him notching 10, 15 goals in the Premier League next season to keep Nottingham Forest up, which would obviously be fantastic for me. But yeah, he's sort of a standout signing that, nobody's really talking about very much. And sort of on that theme, I think Aston Villa are ones, because they made their business, or they did their business very early on in the window. Nobody's still really like linking them with anybody. I think they're quite good at that, flying under the noses of sort of Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein, just making their business quickly and quietly. Obviously, we saw Boubacar Kamara come in on a free transfer, which is exceptional business considering he's a Champions League quality footballer. young French international. Like to see him coming on cheap is amazing. They've got Diego Carlos as well, who was linked with all the top clubs in Europe for a very long time. And obviously signed Coutinho on a permanent. Ben, we'll start with you. What do you see Villa's chances are as next season? Do you think they can push for Europe, or do you think Steven Gerrard's management is just not going to cut the mustard?
No, I don't think Steven Gerrard's a decent manager, to be fair. I think obviously they were a little bit inconsistent last season, but that was probably a bit of him getting used to it and them getting used to him, sort of thing. But yeah, no, they have had a few decent signings, and like if they do get that consistency, they probably could push for Europa League, something like that. They'll probably be in a similar place to Newcastle in terms of pushing for Europa League, because I mean Newcastle obviously have got the money now and are making good signings. So that will improve them. I don't know if it'll improve them to Champions League yet, but Europa League would be a decent target for them, or a good target for them. It's probably what they are looking at as like sort of that progression and sort of making the way to Champions League football.
Yeah, Fab, just on that note, do you think that Europa League football definitely is like sort of the aim, and anything less is not really good enough for Villa next season? Obviously, even last season they signed players like Leon Bailey, Danny Ings, they got Buendia, they got Coutinho, they got Luca Digne. They've got an abundance of talent that just didn't really seem to click at times last season. Do you think now is the step to Europa League? Or yeah, obviously Ben says Gerald's a great manager, I agree, or a good manager rather. Do you think if it's not Europa League football, or at least not Conference League football, then it's the chopping block for him?
I don't know. I think it's good they've made some signings. It shows a lot of faith in Stevie. I do think Champions League is something not just Aston Villa can forget about, but also like Newcastle, and I would say that their competition is like teams like West Ham and Leicester, maybe if they recover from last season, teams that might knock on the door to a Champions League spot once in a while. But I think the quality in the Prem, it's a bit of a pipe dream, really. I think without much talent, they can definitely compete for Europa League spots. I think that is somewhere I'd love to see more Prem teams. Well, we saw it this season, although we weren't as successful in terms of teams like, I think it was Leicester, West Ham, and someone else I've forgotten about, did quite well. But I honestly think a team like Aston Villa, if they had a good season, qualified for the Europa League, built on their success, could actually go and win the whole tournament. I don't think there's that, the teams who won the Europa League, what was the finals? Rangers and
Frankfurt, yeah.
Frankfurt. I don't see why a team like West Ham or Aston Villa can, absolutely lash 3 goals past a team like that. I really think the Prem is a really high quality at the moment. And I think those signings will not only help them place better in the Prem, but it will also even up the competition a little bit as well. I think with that much reinvestment, I think it's going to be a lot harder for teams like Liverpool and City to remain so far ahead, because last season I remember specifically 2 games against Villa, both of them home and away. We were lucky to get 3 points. There's only 1 goal in it, I think, for both legs, and I think that was a bit of an eye opener for me. These teams are making good transfer business. Getting 2 wins against them during the Prem is going to be a real challenge. And if your team's not up for it, they'll more than happily take points off you.
Yeah, we had tough games against Villa. I think away from it was 2-1 or something like that.
Yeah,
we had to hold out for. I think it was the second half. We had to hold out, and it was a tough game. So yeah.
Obviously, everyone remembers the final day of the season, so that one was a bit of a nail biter, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. But
yeah,
Oh,
Fab, I think you touched on it. Sort of the high quality of the Premier League now. Obviously, definitely the best league in the world in terms of all the teams having real quality. But I think in particular for Aston Villa, it's interesting to note that a team that at times last season were battling relegation almost, to go and sign Diego Carlos, who's just traded in European football, to join the Aston Villa project it's a big statement, not just for Villa and obviously Steven Gerrard's got his pulling power, but for the Premier League as a whole. In terms of, like you say, Aston Villa, West Ham, these sides could go and tear apart just top teams from lesser European leagues, just because everybody wants to come to the Premier League nowadays. And yes, sort of drawing on the high level of competition for next season. Just wanted to hear both of your thoughts. Ben, I think we'll start with you. Just on, based upon the done deals so far, and based upon realistic transfers that you think could happen. So obviously we're talking like Jesus to Arsenal, Rafinha potentially to Chelsea, Richarlison to Spurs. What do you think the top four will look like for the Premier League next season, and also bottom three? Now, I know that both your knowledge on necessarily the lower teams and obviously in particular the promoted teams might not be that great, but just as first thought when you think of the bottom three. But yeah, top four first. Let's go with you, Ben.
Top four. I mean, obviously, I'll back City to win the league. That's not saying they will, because it will be very close between City and Liverpool, and maybe even Chelsea if they get their act together. But yes, I'll back City obviously to come top. Then Liverpool second, Chelsea third, and then fourth spot. Yeah, I mean, based on done deals at the moment, you probably go Spurs. But I feel like by the end of the window, if United get their act together, it could be United. But it's just purely because Ten Hag is a good manager, and I do think he'll improve them. Like he is a like his style of football and the way he plays, they are bound to improve. So, but at the moment, based on current transfers, you'd say Spurs. But depending on who United get, it could be United. But it'll be between those two, I think. Anyway.
And Fab, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think for my top four, I've got to go Liverpool at the top. I think for us to win, something would have to go wrong at City. I think if City had a mediocre season, I think they'd still win it. But I'm always going to back my team. I think, and when I say that, I don't mean like, necessarily injuries. I mean like something in the managing play style. Maybe Haaland playing with a striker for the first time just might cause a couple of bumps early on.
A bit like when you won it by a mile because we didn't have a centre back, basically.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's like a clear omission, like which could happen. Like,
we've had it in the past when we dropped. When both our centre backs got injured. And it happens to teams all the time. I think with that, maybe not as major as that, but something would have to go wrong for your season. But as I said, I'm always going to back Liverpool, so I do think got a good chance in winning it. Obviously, City second. I've got a bit of a curveball. I'm going to put Arsenal at third. I actually think they played really well last season, and
Cam will be happy.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd get a bit of positive talk for Arsenal. I think that they've got a really good transfer window. I don't think they're going to land Rafinha, but I think with the young talent they've had, this is now like their third season under Arteta, second season. I think that, and they were so close to Champions League spots, it's easy to forget. I think Spurs were lucky because Arsenal only dropped points to bottom half teams, really, and that was the only thing that let Spurs back into the race. They did beat them at home, but I think Arsenal will be really strong next season, and I think Spurs are a bit of a aging club at the moment. And then I'd put Chelsea in there fourth. I think they lack teeth, but they always tend to do well. Tom won't like that though.
No.
No, he won't. And Ben, I have to say, both you going with the Man U prediction of fourth and Fab with Arsenal at third, I think those are absolute stinkers. I can't see either of those teams hitting top four.
I mean, it's more like I'm wary of United as a City fan. Like,
Oh, Ben, honestly, I'd say Arsenal will finish above Man U without doubt.
I mean,
I know you say Ten Hag and he's bringing in
yeah.
these Dutch
I mean,
players.
it's just it's. I think it comes from when the fixture list comes out. I mean, obviously the matches against Liverpool and Chelsea and stuff like that are obviously important games. But the one game that I really care about is the derby, and I think that's where it comes from. I'm just wary of it a little bit, and like a bit superstitious because I think if I predict them to do bad, they'll do well. So I have to predict them to do a bit better. So then,
United, it's easy to forget how good on paper their team is. Probably better than Chelsea's, probably not as good as City's and Liverpool's, but on paper they have a phenomenal team. Obviously, something isn't clicking for them right now, but if Ten Hag fixes that or some signing comes in, I don't see why they can't, absolutely smash it and come in third. They still put in some good performances last season, not against us, but
no.
You see, Fab, I might have agreed with you last season, but having watched an entire season of it, I mean, I know what you mentioned about individuals like Sancho and Rashford aren't even part of the England setup at the moment, and they're both world-class players on their day. And obviously they've got Bruno Fernandes, they've got Ronaldo. But if you look at their team at face value, like David De Gea isn't like a progressive goalkeeper. He's not good with his feet. He's out and out shot stopper. You can't win the Premier League with David De Gea in goal, in my opinion. Luke Shaw at left back vanished last season. Dallow's rubbish. Maguire's fallen to pieces under the pressure, and Varane didn't have a great start, albeit he's a world-class player that could come through next season. But if you look at the midfield, like Pogba's gone now, so there's no longer that world-class player that's just not really clicking. Now you've got McTominay and Fred with Andreas Pereira as a backup. Bruno had an amazing start to his career at Man U, but is he as like he was overperforming when he first came, and I think we saw that towards the end of last season. Ronaldo's really getting on a bit now, and Rashford and Sancho aren't clicking together. So unless they do make a lot of deals and get players like Frankie De Jong through the door and Anthony, and they really click under Ten Hag, I can't see them doing more than Europa League football again next season.
I think it'll be interesting to see what the signings are. But yeah, I mean, like Fab said, that they have got good players in there. So if they click and if they sign, good players, they could easily get Champions League football. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, fair enough. And so bottom threes for both of you. Obviously, I know you're not sort of well versed with who Fulham, Bournemouth, and Forest necessarily have playing for them, but you'll be familiar with the Premier League team. So just as even if it's not a well informed decision, I just want to hear. Fab, we'll start with you. Bottom three for next season.
I think. I mean, as I said, I haven't seen too much of the Championship teams play, so I'm not going to include any of them in my relegation. So I can't really make that call. I do think Leeds will go down. I think that's a given a little bit, especially if Rafinha goes, and it does definitely sound like he is. It doesn't seem like their new manager's come in and done anything, and they've relied on that Bielsa strategy to get them here, and they've lost that now. I just feel like it's only downwards from here. I think they'd be lucky not to get relegated. In terms of other teams, so Everton I won't include. As I said, I think they've just got enough quality to stay up, and I think after last season, if Frank Lampard stays, I think they'll just carry that into next season. Then I'm not too sure. I'd be tempted to go with Wolves. I think Wolves has. Defensively, they've lost their.
It's a spicy one.
I think Neto and Podence up top are good players, but I don't think Jimenez is going to be able to do enough to keep them. And I think that they'll be in a relegation battle next season. I'll probably go with Brentford as well. I think Tony isn't Premier League quality. He's not. He's Premier League quality, but not enough to single-handedly carry a team out of a relegation battle. And I think a lot of their best players are loanees from Chelsea, from what I remember, Ampadu and Bueno. And I don't know if they're staying on next season, but if you're, arguably two best players are loanees, then and you're not making those permanent, you kind of it's just gonna
Yeah. I know what you mean. Well, Ben, I'll come to you in a second, but I'll just sort of give my predictions. So obviously, City number one. I think they'll just win the league again. Especially adding, if you're buying Calvin Phillips to be a backup to Rodri, then you've got more money than you know what to do with really at this point. Like they're going to win the league. It would be an enormous collapse for City not to win.
It was a good. I think it was 42 million for Calvin Phillips. That's for an English player.
Pennies.
Yeah, exactly. Like
little pocket change.
Yeah, but for an English player, that's quite cheap. I'm not saying it's a lot. It's still a lot of money, but usually for an English player, you're looking like 50, 60 million. You know what I mean?
Well, I hope he flops.
Maybe he won't get the opportunity to do very well. Maybe.
Yeah, be a backup anyway. So good thought. Nah, it might play in like a more centre mid role when Rodri's playing there. I don't know, but yeah.
I'll tell you what, if City's midfield three next season is Rodri, Phillips, and Gundogan, then you've done something very wasteful for attacking talents. But obviously, Liverpool number two. I'm going to go Spurs number three, Chelsea number four. I just think Spurs, I know you mentioned about the aging squad, Fab, but for next season, it doesn't matter whether Son's 29, 30 or Kane's like 28, 29. Like, I think they'll do it. Conte's bought the players that he wants now, or he's in the process of buying the players he wants to fit his system. If he was able to get them fourth last season with the team that Nuno built and Jose Mourinho built, then I'm pretty sure Conte will be able to do it now. He's got his players in. Man U will even struggle to get sixth for me. I think West Ham, Villa, Leicester, even Newcastle now, they're all going to be knocking on the door trying to climb into the top six. But yeah, Arsenal will secure fifth in my opinion. And then for the bottom three, before I come to you, Ben, for me, Leeds, like Fab, we mentioned earlier, Leeds are definitely going down. I think if you're spending 40 million on two players from Red Bull Salzburg in the Austrian league, just because Jesse Marsch was the manager there before, I think you're doing something very wrong, because unless those players really shock me, like Brendan Aronson is not even a nailed on starter for the US national team. So for him to be coming in for 25 million is a joke. But yeah, besides them, I think Southampton, I definitely think Southampton could go down. Their one marquee signing so far this window has been Gavin Bazunu, who obviously you'll know, Ben, he was a Man City keeper, but spent last season on loan at Portsmouth. So if he's now your number one goalkeeper and you let him force to go on a free, I think something's gone wrong there. And if they lose Ward-Prowse, I think he's the only one really keeping them in the league at the moment. They've lost Brozier as well. They had him on loan. He was their only striker scoring. And then finally, I'll go Bournemouth. Obviously, Fab, you don't know that much about the newly promoters. That's fine. But essentially, Bournemouth took their parachute payments and splashed it on a bunch of championship level players that would get them promoted, but wouldn't really. I can't see them gelling well enough to stay up in the Prem. I just think they're going to be like another Norwich, and they'll just yo-yo for the next 5 or 6 years. So yeah, there's my three to go down. Obviously, I'm not going to include Forest. I think hopefully what I'm hoping is we'll be like a Villa, a Newcastle, a Leeds will be like a big caliber club that stays up for a while, rather than like a yo-yo team where it's like Norwich, Fulham, Bournemouth, you know the type. They'll just yo-yo up and down through divisions.
Well, I actually wanted to ask, so there's I don't know too much about Forest, but from what I remember seeing, they have a Welsh striker who did quite well for you guys.
Brendan Johnson,
that's the one. And obviously you mentioned you had your marquee signing come in. Is he going to replace Johnson? Or
no,
are they going to play?
It's a great question, but yeah, they play together. So obviously last season we had Keenan Davis playing that Awoniyi role, but yeah, this season it'll be him. And Johnson is a winger, but Steve Cooper's system sort of facilitates him. So we have a 5-2-1-2. So 2 centre mids, Cam, 2 strikers. But Johnson kind of plays as like the right side of striker, almost as like a right forward, right winger. So he sort of sprints off and then either crosses the ball into the other striker or goes for goal himself. So that's his role in the team. But yeah, hopefully those two will tear out the Premier League. I've seen Man U are interested in Brennan Johnson. I'm not surprised because yeah, if he hits the ground running, he can be a top player. And I'd love to keep him at Forest his whole career. But if we go down or we're not making progress, he'll move on. Like absolutely move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ben, we'll finish off with you, mate. Bottom 3 for next season.
It's a difficult one because, like I say, I know a little bit, but not probably not enough. Yeah, I think the same as you two in terms of Leeds. Just on paper, like it looks like obviously they're losing the best players and then bringing in players that, like you say, aren't proven unless they hit the ground running. Like it looks difficult. I don't know. Because you've convinced me about Bournemouth. I'll say Bournemouth. And then, I mean, Fulham, like they've been doing a bit with Norwich, haven't they? Because there was that stat where Norwich get relegated, Fulham get promoted, Fulham get relegated, Norwich get promoted, and it's happened for like the last couple of
They've
seasons.
not played each other in a very long time.
Like last few seasons or something like that. But I don't know. I might go for Brentford, like Fab did. Just Fab's convinced me about Brentford as well. So there you go.
Yeah, especially losing Christian Eriksen. If they do lose Christian Eriksen, seems like kind of a no-brainer that they could. Well, they'll definitely be in a relegation dogfight, I'd imagine. But yeah, I think that's all for today. Thank you very much for your thoughts, guys. And to you guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop it a like. We really appreciate it. And yeah, subscribe if you're new around here. But we will see you next time. Cheers.